ready. So hi everyone. Welcome to this totally wild webinar of the Hinterland Who's Who series. Today we're going to hear and talk about the polar bear, which is a really cool species, and one that we at Hinterland Who's Who have made a video on. So a bit about me. Switch. Give me 2 seconds. I'm going to try again. Because for right now, I can't seem to switch to be able to scroll my presentation. Try this again. There we go. All right. So my name is Annie Langlois. I'm here in Gatineau today to talk to you guys about the polar bear. I'm the Hinterland Who's Who coordinator. So Hinterland Who's Who, we make short little videos about wildlife species. You might have seen one of those videos on television. You can see them online as well on our website. And we write fact sheets about the different Canadian animals. And so I'm going to start this presentation by showing you our video about the polar bear. It was made a bit about 10 years ago. So it's a bit fuzzy, so bear with me, haha. And so I'm going to show this to you as an introduction, and then we'll carry on talking about this bear. I'll find my polar bear video on here. Start over again, sorry.
He's big, he's bold, he's a polar bear. And as much as we wouldn't want to run into him face to face, we also wouldn't want to see anything threaten his existence. Hard to believe an animal this big needs our help. But even though the polar bears live far away in the remote Arctic, we are having a negative impact on their lives. Our pollutants travel the oceans and atmosphere and enter their food chain. Plus, climate change is causing the ice they live on to melt earlier each spring. This makes it more difficult for the bears to catch their prey. If you're wondering how you can help, simple things like riding your bike, walking, or taking the bus instead of driving will do a lot for our environment and the polar bears. But that's just a start. If you go to hww.ca, you can learn more about polar bears and find ideas on how to help protect Canada's wildlife. That's hww.ca.
Oops, sorry. Awesome. I'm going to find my presentation again. There we go. I see we have a bunch of new participants today. I just want to make sure that you guys can hear me okay and can see me. And just tell you that if you guys have questions, you're welcome to ask them at the end live or to type them in the chat. There's a lot of feedback on the audio. Even on my voice. I can try to talk less loud. Just give us a second. We're just want to make sure that everyone's hearing us okay. Only on the video. Okay. That's quite possible. What I'm going to tell you at the end is where you can watch it again, perhaps online, or I can play it again, perhaps at the end for those who haven't seen it or with those with issues. I'm not sure what the problem is exactly right now, but we'll try to solve it. So the polar bear. And of course I can't seem to be able to scroll again. There we go. There we go. Okay, so the polar bear has many names, of course. In Inuktitut, so in the Arctic for the Inuit people, his name is Nanook. That's the word for polar bear in Inuktitut, but it's also an important figure in their mythology. So they have legends about the polar bear, and the polar bear is the master of bears in their culture. In French, like some of you likely know, his name is Ours Blanc, so white bear, or Ours Polaire, which basically means polar bear. In Russian, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce this, but it does mean the white bear. In Norwegian and Danish and Icelandic, his name is Isbjørn, so the ice bear. But in Latin, its name is Ursus maritimus, which means sea bear, and we'll find out why exactly in a minute. So here are images of the polar bear as we know it. So a bit of a description here. So the polar bear is the largest land carnivore. I don't know if you guys know what carnivore means. It means meat eater, and it's the largest land carnivore on Earth right now. Of course, there aren't dinosaurs around anymore, but right now the polar bear is the largest one. It's white to cream colored. It appears to be white to cream colored. We'll find out why in a minute. And it's not exactly white or cream, but it does seem to be white or cream to us, with a black nose and some small black eyes. And it's a close relative to the grizzly bear, but their bodies and necks and nose and skulls are longer. You can see a picture down here of a grizzly bear and a polar bear. They're actually so closely related that some biologists think that they're actually the same species, and the polar bear has just adapted to life in the Arctic. They can actually mate together and have offspring that are a mix of grizzly and polar. So the polar bear is super well adapted to life in the Arctic. Its fur is actually transparent. It's not really white, and it's made of two layers, the underfur and the guard hair. And it does help him stay warm, and it helps him camouflage. Why would a big white bear need to camouflage? It's to hunt. Imagine if he were bright purple, it would be very hard for him to hunt with, so that the prey could see it really, really well if it were brightly colored. So that's another reason why it seems white. Underneath the transparent fur, his skin is dark in order to conserve heat. So when sunlight hits his fur, the black skin helps conserve that heat. It has a large underlayer of fat measuring up to 11 to 12 centimeters thick. So it's a bit of a fat bear. Its ears and its tail are small so that they don't freeze as easily. And it has big stocky legs and large paws to help him walk on snow and thin ice. It also has a very developed sense of smell. We'll see how impressive its sense of smell is a bit later. So basically, the polar bear's habitat is floating ice most of the year. So that's where it prefers to live. And so its adaptation to life in the cold and on this ice are very, very important to its survival. So the adult male polar bear measures between 240 to 260 centimeters in length. It weighs as much as a small car. It reaches its adult size between 8 and 10 years of age, and usually lives up to be 25. So it doesn't live very long. For the females, they're actually quite smaller. They're actually half the size of an adult male. So they measure between 120 to 165 centimeters. They weigh 150 to 250 kilograms, but they can double their weight when they're pregnant just before they enter their den. They eat so much prior to entering the den that they can actually double their sizes. They reach their adult size between 5 and 6 years of age and live up to 20 years. So we talked about the fact that it lived in ice a bit, and that it was called a sea bear in Latin. Why is that? Well, it's because they're actually awesome swimmers. When swimming, their forepaws, so their front paws, act like big, large paddles, and they steer using their hind paws. They can swim for days in a row, way more than 3 days, which is what has been observed. They can keep their eyes open underwater, as you can see in the image, and their fat helps them float. But they can stay underwater for about a minute. So where exactly does the polar bear live? It's found throughout the coastal areas of the Arctic. You can see on the picture here on the map. It's found all around the North Pole, but not exactly at the North Pole. It lives exactly where the area that has lines in it, the shadowed area. It lives mostly on the sea ice, except to give birth, and during the summer, where there's no ice in some of the areas. Sometimes we can observe polar bears as far south as Newfoundland and Labrador, or even the Gulf of St. Lawrence. They come in the St. Lawrence drifting on the sea ice. It doesn't happen very often, but it does once in a while. And Canada has one of the 3 largest denning areas, so the areas where the females go to give birth. So one of the 3 largest, and it's close to Churchill in Manitoba. So I said earlier that the polar bear is a carnivore, meaning that it eats meat. What exactly does it eat? So, of course, because it lives on the cold ice, it needs a large quantity of fat to survive, especially in the winter. So, what the polar bear does, it finds holes in the ice, breathing holes, where marine mammals come up to breathe some air, because marine mammals aren't fish. They need air to survive, even though they live in the water. So they find breathing holes in the ice, and they go hang out there until a prey happens to be there. So its preferred menu item is actually the ringed seal. It's the fattest seal around, so that's why they prefer to eat them. But they also would eat some other species of seals and walruses. Sometimes, when belugas or narwhals get caught in the ice, they will feed on them. Or if larger whales die and leave a carcass, they would eat some of the carcass. So they can scavenge. We call that scavenging when an animal eats another animal that's already dead. In the summer, though, it feeds really, really, really little. So sometimes it could spend weeks without eating, even months. And so it stays inactive as much as possible. It relaxes so that it doesn't need to use up its energy storage as much. But sometimes when it does find something tasty, like marine birds or a carcass that's lying around, it will eat, of course. So, what does the year look like for a polar bear? Well, males and females meet up in April or May on the sea ice to mate. And so the pregnant females after that will go to their maternity dens in mid-October. What are maternity dens? I keep saying that word. Well, basically, it's a place that females excavate. So they will actually dig a hole in the snow to give birth. So you can see in the image below, that's what it looks like basically. They find a south-facing slope. So normally when areas face the south, they get more sunlight, so they're a bit warmer. So they will find the south-facing slopes of hills and valleys and find a place where snow has drifted and accumulated. And so they will dig a hole that's about 1.5 meters in diameter and about 1 meter of height in the middle. And so the entrance, as you can see, becomes actually sealed because of the ice and snow that's being blown over by the wind. Sometimes there are breathing holes coming out of the denning area, but sometimes not even. And so temperature stays only a few degrees below zero throughout the winter, even though it's much colder outside. So it becomes a comfy place for the females to give birth. So you can see baby polar bears here. So you can have 1 to 3 cubs being born at a time. The normal number of cubs is actually 2, so twins. They're born in late November to early January, and they're about 25 centimeters long and weigh less than 1 kilogram. Their eyes are closed and they're almost hairless. They look a bit like white rabbits, as you can see on the top photo, anyways. So the female and her cubs exit the den in late March to early April. From the time she goes into the den till the time she comes out of the den, the female actually does not eat nor drink. She relies totally on her fat storages that she amassed prior to going in the den. So for 2 years, the cubs rely on their mother to hunt for food. They won't hunt for themselves. They will learn though. They will watch her hunt and try to imitate her. But really, they rely on her. She will get the food for them, and they will stick around for another year or half a year in total. So for 2.5 to 3 years, the cubs will stick around their mothers, learning how to hunt, and then they move on. So other interesting facts about the polar bear. Polar bears are not territorial. Um, Often big mammals will defend a territory so that they can be the only ones to feed on this territory or live on this territory. Polar bears don't do that because they travel so long and for such distances between spots where they can eat, those breathing holes in the ice. They actually share areas to eat at. So I mentioned the fact that they had a really good sense of smell. They can detect a seal breathing hole up to a kilometer away and covered by 90 centimeters of ice and snow. And actually, their eyesight and sense of hearing are actually pretty similar to that of humans, it is thought. So, pretty good, but not the best. It's their smell that actually helps them the most. So, they can be pretty fast, but because they tend to overheat because of their layer of fat and because of their awesome fur, they don't normally tend to run a lot because it gets too warm. It gets too warm to them. But they can gallop up to 5 to 6 kilometers an hour. So while they're in the water swimming, it's their fat layer that keeps them warm. And while they're on land, it's their fur. So polar bears don't hibernate. Um, Black bears and grizzly bears tend to go a bit quieter in the winter while there's less food. But for polar bears, they don't do that. But they can still slow down their metabolism in the summer if they need to, or even in the winter. It depends on if they can find food or not. So they can choose to slow down, to relax a bit more, and to just rely to live off their storage of fat that they've accumulated. So yeah, I told you that prior, their senses of hearing and sight are close to that of humans. And you can't find polar bears in the Antarctic. They're only in the Arctic. Um, there actually are no land mammals at all on the Antarctic continent, only in the Arctic. So that's about all for me. You can always visit hww.ca, which is the Hinterland Who's Who website, and you can read the fact sheet about the polar bear. You can also look at that video we showed you initially again, or we can play it again actually if most people want to hear it. You can ask questions now via chat or live using your own webcam or microphone, or you can email them to me at info@hww.ca. I welcome all questions and I will answer you. For more information about our webinars, our CWF webinars, you can always visit the CWF Explore Our Work education site. And of course, do you have any questions? Okay, so I'll try to go up. Oh, I hope you guys heard me. People with McDonald PS. I was trying to speak loud, but perhaps I wasn't speaking loud enough. All right. So about those questions. In Nepali, it's Sito Badu. We have a group of Nepali speaking Bhutanese refugees here. Awesome. Thanks for the info. You probably won't have polar bears in Nepal, unfortunately, but it's good to know. I hope I pronounced it okay. Okay, so we have students here that would like to know, why don't polar bears get cold? Well, as I was saying before, they have a lot of fat. Polar bears are pretty fat creatures. And so this fat that's covering their body underneath their fur keeps them really warm. And above their skin, they have two layers of fur. So a very thick underlayer and a lighter guard hair layer. So they have actually a bit like you have two winter coats on you. So that's how they stay warm. And also, because they have such big feet and because they eat so much fat, that's how they can stay warm in the wintertime and don't have their toes don't freeze, their ears don't freeze, their tails don't freeze because they're so short. Is it true that polar bears have webbed feet? Somewhat webbed, not like a duck, not as much, but yeah, there's webbing between the toes, because they're so well adapted to swimming. They're actually half considered a marine mammal, like a whale or a seal by biologists, because they live so much in the water. Why do polar bears only live in the Arctic? In the Antarctic, actually, the only live critters over there, other than really tiny bacteria and algae, are basically birds. There's a lot of seabirds in the Antarctic, on the coast of the Antarctic, but I don't believe they come very far inland. There's not much to live on the Antarctic, and so there's actually no land mammals. So no mice, no lemmings, no Arctic fox, no polar bear. Um, Actually, I don't believe the layer of ice in the Antarctic is that important either. Like the coastal sea ice that the polar bear likes. Polar bears like to live on the seasonal ice, so the ice that comes and go between seasons. I don't believe it's that impressive in the Antarctic either, so it's not their preferred habitat. And probably also it's so far that in no point in time polar bears made it down there. It might be as simple as that. How many seals can they eat in one day? Um, as much as possible, basically, is the answer. It's not easy to catch a seal, so the polar bear will lay in ambush at those breathing holes and wait until a seal comes by, and will catch it. And seals don't live in massive colonies either, so I believe they will eat as much as they can. Sometimes they will go for walruses, which do live in colonies, but walruses are really tusks. So they don't prefer to hunt walruses. They're actually a much harder prey to get. How big are they when they leave their mums? Well, considering that they only get to be as big as adults when they're about 8, 10 years old, when they're males, they're much smaller. They're probably half grown, when they do leave their mothers. They're still smaller than adults. I don't know the exact size though, but they're about 2.5 to 3 years old. So they're probably like teenage bears. What season is the birth season? Um, it's late in the winter or early spring. I guess it could go to mid-April, I was saying. Um, so they actually are born in the spring. For the first little while, they stay in their den, and then when it gets a bit warmer outside, they move on out the den um, and go out in the world. Do they have any predators? Actually, no. Polar bears don't have any natural predators. Of course, now it's a bit different with humans. Humans do hunt polar bears, Inuit people, for example. And so humans are actually the only known predator to polar bears. How many times do they have a baby in their whole lives? Well, normally a female will have two baby bears every year from the time that they're 5 until the time that they're 20. So every single year they will have between 1 to 3 baby bears for about 15 years. It's not that quick because the litters are so small. It doesn't um, make populations go. There's not a lot of baby bears that make it every year because it happens only once a year. But yeah, about 15 times in their lifetime they get baby bears. How big are their teeth? Um, I'm not sure about that. Let me check. They hunt more using their claws actually, and their claws are not retractable. They're not like cats. Their claws stay out all the time, and those are about like 10 centimeters long. So they're pretty impressive. The polar bear claws. For their teeth, I'm not sure. Um, hmm, Trying to find the info. You know what? If you would send me a word by email, I will find that out for you. Unfortunately, I don't have that information right now. How many polar bears are in existence in the whole wide world? So there's a few populations in the world, as I was saying. There's some in Russia, some in Norway, some in Denmark, well, in Greenland, and some in Canada. Current world population is about 25,000 to 30,000, and about half of them are in Canada. Some populations, some groups of them are doing pretty well right now. They're actually, the population is growing and everything is fine, but other populations aren't doing so well depending on where they are in the world. Are polar bears going extinct? Not right now, no. Some populations, as I was saying, so some groups of them are at risk, meaning that there are different things threatening them. For example, climate change that's taking away some of the ice for some parts of the year. But in some other areas, they're doing fine. So scientists in Canada, are trying to find exactly what the biggest threats to them are and how to manage them so that the polar bear doesn't go extinct. How many seals would a polar bear eat a week? As I was saying, as much as possible. I don't know exactly how many they can eat until they're full, but knowing that this bear needs as much fat as possible to survive, my guess is if it sees a seal that it can catch, it will eat it. Because it doesn't happen that often actually, and seals are pretty hard to catch, as I was saying. Belugas and narwhals are even worse, and walruses, well, because of the tusks, they're pretty hard to. So because bears have to walk for such a long way to get to those breathing holes so they can eat, sometimes they will eat probably as much as they can. Will the recording of this be posted? Yes, it will, shortly. Shouldn't be an issue, no problem. If you want to send me a word to info@hww.ca, I can certainly tell you when it will be posted. If a mama bear has two babies 1 year and they stay with her for 3 years, how can she have two more babies the next year? Where do the yearlings go when the mom while the mama's in the den? You're right, actually. Sorry, I'm probably uh, misexpressed myself. You're right. They do stay with their mothers, and they wouldn't reproduce every year. I'm sorry. I I should have thought of that one. You're right. Um, so basically, yeah, the young ones stay with their mothers for 3 years, and you would be totally right. They wouldn't reproduce then. Sorry about that. My fault. So, do we have? Did I answer all your questions? Awesome. Again, if you have other questions, don't hesitate to ask me via email at info@hww.ca, and you're more than welcome to read the fact sheet as well uh, on hww. And watch the video again, for sure. It's on there too. See, someone is typing. Yeah, the next one is, I believe, on the great horned owl. So I will see you guys then. Thanks for joining us today, indeed. So have a great day, everyone. When is the next one? I believe it's in a month. I don't have the whole schedule in my mind. Perhaps Melissa can chime in. She's answering you right now. Yeah, I believe it's in a month, if I'm correct. We're giving some in French though in the meanwhile. Yesterday was the Atlantic Puffin in French, and we're giving one next week, I believe, as well in French, if that can be of any interest. No problem. You guys have an awesome day.